Welcome to a video in my new series, one which I've dubbed AOTP for Dummies. This one is for Jace and Eldrazi. Probably my top pick for the best army in most formats, honestly. Jace and Eldrazi have a lot of... There's honestly a lot of weird synergies between these two and what blue spells offer them. So what we're going to go over here in this video, as you can see on the table, in Tabletop Simulator here, we have the core spells and core figures on the left half. These are the ones that I think you should pretty much be using every single time you're considering a Jace and Ruiner based army. So yeah, green, things boxed in green are the core spells that I don't think you should be trading out. You should pretty much always use these. Things in the blue over here are going to be kind of flex, where you could choose a few of these to complement what's in green, kind of either based on whatever you're feeling. Honestly, I think these all have pretty reasonable synergy with what's going on in core spells and figures. So on that note, let's talk a little more about the core figures and core spells. We're assuming that you're going to be playing 600 point army, 600 points worth of figures, and 12 cards, 200 points worth of spells. This is kind of just like the cookie cutter build, where like we'll give you the baseline and you can fill in the rest with what you want later, right? If you need to play 500 points, you just drop the Lantern Geist. They're a 30 point squad. So if you need to drop this down to 490, you just buy Jace and Ruiner. But in this case, I'm assuming 600 points. So you have Jace and you have Lantern Geist. Tons of great synergy between these two by themselves. Jace is probably the strongest singular Planeswalker as far as like the most annoying asshole to deal with. The 7 range of 5 power is absolutely nuts, and his 7 life makes him honestly reasonably hard to kill. Lantern Geist synergized with Jace because 4 life and 4 toughness is for a card that costs 30 points. It's utterly insane that they thought this was balanced and this is okay to release as is. On top of them getting Flicker, which means every time you start to take a turn with Jace, you can immediately pop these guys off the battlefield into your reserve to heal all the damage off of them, assuming they haven't been destroyed, of course. And then they have the other ability, Eerie Observation, which, again, typically during Jace's turn, because you're only summoning during your Planeswalker's turn, you can look at the top card of your opponent's library and then decide to place that on the top or the bottom of their library. And then Jace also has Focused Thoughts, which allows you to do the same, but for your own library, so that you can filter out bad cards or slightly less necessary cards for a certain matchup, and filter those to the bottom in hopes of getting your more important cards sooner. So yeah, you have a lot of just deck control and battlefield control between the Lantern Geist and Jace, like popping in and out repeatedly, and their abilities. And then Jace has gigantic range, so it's very hard to pin him and do massive damage to him, other than green, usually. Green with Titanic Growth and range figures are probably the best at dealing with this guy. 7 range, 5 power he's kind of one of the offensive keystones of your army, but the other part here is, of course, the Ruiner. We're not really paying a ton of attention to his abilities with this build. The Ruiner's job, for the most part, is just to lay the smackdown on the opposing Planeswalker. As you'll see from the core spells, Royal Mage's Trick, right? Target creature you control gets plus X power, where X is the number of cards in an opponent's hand, and X can't be greater than 4. So we're combining Royal Mage's Trick for up to plus 4 power to give this guy up to 10 power for 1 attack, assuming he doesn't have High Ground or you don't have the Power Glyph. Combining that with one of either Essence Flux and Ghostly Wings. Essence Flux basically just teleports the Ruiner from any point, wherever he may be on the map, to any empty space within 6 clear sight spaces of Jace. So this is basically like, yeah, if you have Royal Mage's Trick and Essence Flux, or yeah, Ghostly Wings as well, a hero creature you control gets +2 move and flying. That's also good. Not as expensive, not quite as potent, in my opinion, as Essence Flex, but considering the cost of 10 versus 25, it's still super good. But yeah, your major win con, other than Jace trying to run around and shoot forever, your major win con is pulling any two of these top 3 cards here. I should say, you want Royal Mage's Trick, and then you want one of these two to pair with it to get the Ruiner directly on top of the opposing Planeswalker and blow their brains out, right? Some of these other core spells, we have Project Self here. This could be used either defensively or offensively to help Jace jump around the battlefield, give you better summoning positions, or just to get you out of the fight so that the Ruiner can finish off a fight if Jace is like severely damaged or something. So Selective Memory is generally to fish one of these 3 cards out. You're trying to get your kill combo ASAP. Selective Memory, again, like combined with Jace's Focused Thoughts, is going to help you get these top 3 cards pretty quickly, I'd say. But these 5 cards right here, Ghost of the Wings, Royal Mage's Trick, Essence Flex, Project Self, Selective Memory, kind of your key combo / offensive cards for the most part. The other 4 cards in this deck are basically standard blue. Jace's Erasure combines well with Lantern Geist to help you delete important cards. Whether, if you use Eerie Observation and you find Titanic Growth, Twin Flame, those key, powerful, especially red and green cards, who will probably tend to give Jace the most problems, you can then just play Jace's Erasure to destroy Twin Flame, and like once Twin Flame's gone, Jace's odds of winning go up pretty significantly, if you ask me. Then we have Unsummoned Aether Spouts, which is to reduce, again, kind of to help with the squad control, with Twin Flame especially. These are pseudo to slow down Twin Flame, right? Twin Flame only works on squads, so if you have Kessigs or some other semi-threatening red squad reasonably close to Jace, these cards will help you ensure that Jace remains safe for at least another turn. And then we have the final card over here, which is Misdirection. The primary reason I put this here is mostly for Black's Despise. We don't want Despise hitting Jace. He's one of our core offensive engines. It's just him and the Ruiner. You typically want Jace to be able to get a couple of good shots off during the game. Him suffering -1 power permanently is not conducive to dealing damage. So Misdirection is to kick that off of Jace and put that back on the opposing Black Planeswalker. The other 2 reasons, other than, again, Despise is probably number one reason why this is here. If you're going against Black, you almost exclusively save Misdirection to get Despise off of Jace. But other good reasons for red and green: Chandra's Fury, Leaf Arrow, Predatory Strike, sometimes even if you want to steal something like Paths Revealed, which if you saw from our flex picks over here, we will be picking at least one other squad other than the Lantern Geist. So, you can also steal Red's, whatchamacallit, like Stubborn Resilience, Fire Breathing. And all those cards are, you don't really want to give it to the Lantern Geist, but those cards are pretty reasonable on the projections or the Scions when you flex pick one of these 2 over here to put them in your army. So, Misdirection has a lot of pretty good uses against green and red. White likes to run a pretty reasonable number of enchantments as well. I don't think this Jace army is super concerned with dealing with white enchantments, but you could steal their Tenacity, their Hope Against Hope. Not that Tenacity and Hope Against Hope will do a whole lot for you, considering your opponent still controls those spells, but you at least take their effects away from your opponent, if nothing else. So Misdirection is still usable in those cases, although not great. Altogether, that's the core of the army. You have 520, again, out of 600 points, we're assuming, used for figures. So you have 80 points left over. And for spells, again, if we're assuming 12 cards, 200 points, we've used 9 cards and 135 points. So you have, 65 points left and 3 cards left to throw in here. So as far as creatures, we're going to move over to our flex picks here. Creatures and spells. For the creatures, yeah, we have 80 points left for the army. You can only choose one of these 2 creatures, and there's not enough points left over to pick anything else. I'm personally pretty partial to the Scions for this build, mostly for their abilities, because again, our two main engines, the Eldrazi Ruiner and Jace, the Scions help feed the Ruiner, both for Devour for speed and Devour for strength, honestly. Devour for speed can kind of fill in if you're missing Ghostly Wings or Essence Flux, or even better, Devour for speed could instead buff Ghostly Wings to effectively give the Ruiner +6 move and flying, which is going to be nuts with his base 5 move. He basically becomes 11 move and flying for one turn. He's basically going to go wherever the hell he wants to go on that turn. And then number 2 here, Devour for strength, +2 power until end of turn if you sacrifice a Scion. This is not hard to figure out, right guys? You buff the Warrior Mage's Trick for up to +4 power. You could then eat a Scion for another +2. You're rolling 12 dice with the Ruiner instead of the 10 that we had before. The great thing for these Devour 4 abilities is that there is really no conditions attached to them. It boils down to as long as you summon the Scions and there's at least 1 or 2 of them on the battlefield, you can start eating them at the start of the Ruiner's turn, right? You can start eating them for +4 power, or sorry, +4 move and +2 power. You know, you can eat 2 of them, 2 of the Scions to get both of those, or you can just eat 1 Scion to get 1 of the 2 buffs. And the Scions are also pretty reasonable as a frontline fighter. They're not fantastic, but they get the job done if you really need them to do something. However, their primary job is, without a doubt, just to sit around and be eaten by the Ruiner. I want them so that the Ruiner becomes an even bigger win con for me, a bigger, wrecking ball for me. So to the other flex pick, which I think the projections, I think they're very reasonable. Not quite as potent as the Scions. But I think they enable more consistency, basically just between collective knowledge, allowing you to draw an additional card, which means, again, you're getting to these top 3 much faster. And then Illusionary Deception, which will add to Jace's survivability in case he's getting surrounded or flooded or whatever. If you want to sleep with Jace, like leave Jace asleep for a few turns and walk the Ruiner around. And then you can just take like 1 random turn with Jace to teleport him across the map. This is something for him, but this I think is a little more for like defensive / consistency plays, where the Scions tend to make the Ruiner just kind of better. I wouldn't even say it's very high rolly, but this is just more in line with what the deck wants versus what the projections provide. But the projections still provide an additional ranged figure. If you don't want Jace to be your only ranged figure for some reason, you have these guys. They're probably one of the better ranged figures altogether in the game. Range of 6 is pretty good. But yeah, I would say if you want to use these guys, it's probably because if for some reason you want to have an extra range option outside of Jace for this army, and maybe you want collective knowledge. I think those are the top 2 reasons I would take these over the Scions. But if you ask me personally, I think Scions are the pick here almost every time to toss into this army to bump it to 575 points. So spells, we have 65 points and 3 slots open. There's plenty of good spells. These are kind of my top picks for flex spells that could go into this deck. It doesn't really matter which 2 of these squads you've picked. Most of these spells should work for them regardless. Welcome to the Fold is probably slightly better with the illusionary projections because they're generally going to be hanging back by Jace. What else? I'd imagine Ghost Form is slightly better for the projections as well, in case you need to get over like an enemy Ruiner. Ghost Form allows them to ignore his otherworldly, so that they can just shoot him for 3 or maybe 4 dice, just straight up, 4 versus 0, no defense for the Ruiner. But altogether, considering all 11 of these, I think these top 6 are probably the ones you want to stick mostly to. These are the better flex cards in my opinion, so pick maybe whatever, you have to pick at least 3, right? Probably pick 2 or 3 out of these, and if you need like a filler card, like I think Welcome to the Fold is pretty good. It's only, you can only do this during a blue Planeswalker's turn. Luckily, Jace is one of our bigger engines, offensive engines in this build, so he's pretty often taking turns, so you should often have the chance to play this. You can always use this to move and attack with creatures from your own squad. If you read Welcome to the Fold, it doesn't say that you only have to use an opponent figure. It says you can use a unique squad, right? 2 creatures from a unique squad within 4 clear sight spaces of your Planeswalker. So this could be anyone's unique squad. This can be your own squad. So this again, you go heroes only. Like if you're fighting heroes only, like the Eldrazi and either Avakian or Core Captain, Welcome to the Fold still works with your squads. You don't really want to use it on these guys. Your Lantern Geist they're kind of weak. If they're the only squad on the field, sure, go for it. But typically, Welcome to the Fold, if your opponent doesn't have squads, you definitely want to use it with your 3 power squads. Psychic Rebuttal, I really like this one a lot. This is, again, for my fear of Twin Flame and Titanic Growth. They're both sorceries. This will help counter them if you don't have, like, let's say if you didn't erase them via Jace's Erasure, or you somehow don't have unsummoned Aether Spouts, or whatever the case may be. Maybe you've already used those spells. This just gives you an extra out against those. Sometimes you can't always prevent that from being played, from Twin Flame and Titanic Growth from being played, but this is one more out. I tend to include this card in my Eldrazi Jace build personally. Next up here we have Mind Control. Now, Mind Control I like less than Welcome to the Fold, mostly because it says target squad that an opponent controls. If you're going against heroes only, this is a dead card. And I think heroes only tends to be one of the harder matchups for this army. So I am slightly less inclined to use this one. It's additional squad insurance. Again, like for my fear of Twin Flame and Titanic Growth, you could maybe run their squad creature further away from you and try and, I don't know, put it in engagements with your own figure, or just get it far enough so that maybe they can't use Twin Flame to kill you with their squad creature on their next turn. There's some uses here. I would never completely write it off, but it's kind of low on my priority list of spells to include with this deck. Pieces of the puzzle is basically the Lantern Geist Eerie Observation, just turned into a spell. It's a 5-point cheapo. There's some synergy with Jace's Erasure here. I'm kind of 50-50 on this card. Sometimes I use it, sometimes I don't. It's just kind of how I'm feeling on any given day. It's a perfectly fine card, especially as long as you keep Jace's Erasure in the core. It combos well with that. It still helps you also filter through your opponent's deck to make sure you can dump their Twin Flame, their Titanic Growth, whatever other spells you may personally fear towards the bottom of their deck, so that you have extra turns to prepare for it when it eventually does come later in the game. As a 5-point cheapo, it's hard to go wrong. It's just not usually super impactful, if you ask me. Gone Missing. So you shuffle a spell card from your graveyard back to the library. Kinda sucks that it doesn't go straight to your hand, but it does give you a second chance at your spell. My primary use case is Royal Mage's Trick. In case either you used it and maybe your Ruiner flubbed the attack, like if you got +3 power and you rolled 2 or 3 hits out of 9 dice, you could go with Gone Missing to bring it back, to bring Royal Mage's Trick back into your deck to try again later. Or if you're going against black and black somehow discarded, like if they use Liliana's Caress, maybe Barter and Blood, one of those effects which would cause you to discard your Royal Mage's Trick, this could get it back for you. Because again, I would say this is a pretty key win con, maybe the most high impact card in this deck. I have tried this with this deck, and it's pretty good. It's just slow. That's kind of the problem. Is you need to kind of read. You would have to read the board state. You're gonna need another couple turns to get your card back. Whatever you do bring back with Gone Missing, sometimes even unsummon is worth it if you kill the opponent's Planeswalker and then you want to get rid of their squads. Sometimes that's worth it. But it's all about reading the board state and seeing, like, do you think your Jace, your Planeswalker, will survive another 2 turns-ish, maybe even 3. Depends on at what point in the game you're in. But like you gotta play the odds of how big is your library, right? How large is your library? What are the odds that you can draw back into that card now that you had to shuffle it back in? This is about, sometimes I go about 60-40 between picking either Welcome to the Fold at 60% or this at about 40% as like my big expensive card for this deck. Pour Over the Pages is pretty good when you're going against heroes only armies. I think this is the primary use case for this card. It is mostly to give Aether Spouse and Unsummon some value, because you don't really need to use these cards if you're going against heroes only. You can unsummon your own figures, your own squad. This doesn't say that has to be an opponent squad, but for the most part, you're probably holding on to both of these cards for an entire match if you're going against heroes only. Pour Over the Pages will help you convert those cards into +1 toughness for your Jace, which will help them survive, because you know those heroes are going to inevitably be getting very close to him and probably trying to kill him in melee combat. This will give him, instead of 3 toughness, buff him to 4, which in my opinion is pretty significant considering his life value is honestly pretty good for AOTP. 7 life is pretty good considering a lot of Planeswalkers reside in the 6 to sometimes 7 range. If you take Mind Control for the additional security against squad-based armies, Pour Over the Pages will also convert Mind Control into an additional +1 toughness while Mind Control sits in your hand and does nothing. It's a card to consider strongly, especially if you're running Mind Control, and maybe just strongly in general because it's 5 points. Yeah, these bottom 5, I'm not going to talk too much about these. Ghost Form is very creature-based destruction. If you're going to play a little more, like lean more into the control side. This also only works for your squads and not for your Ruiner, so it's not super in line with what this deck is trying to do. Scatterark, we already have Misdirection, so I'm not super huge on Scatterark, but it is something in case you are really scared of something like Fire Breathing, Power of Fire, Stubborn Resilience maybe. If you don't want to deal with your opponent playing those cards and then immediately attacking you, this will help you not have to deal with that, since Misdirection is more reactionary. You'd have to wait until your next turn to be able to steal or, remove those enchantments from red, especially otherwise. Call to Heal is, squads aren't really our big focus. Our squads are more supports here than actual things we feel strong needs to protect. So Call to Heal is a bit of a tough sell. Your Scions are somewhat valuable to your Ruiner. I'm not a big fan. I've never really used Call to Heal in this deck. This is useless against heroes as well. This only works when your squad is attacked by another squad. So if you're going to use Call to Heal, bring Pour Over the Pages, please. So at least you could get some value out of Call to Heal just sitting in your hand, thanks to Pour Over the Pages. Anticipate. This card's a meme, in my opinion. I think if you're really trying to be, I guess I'll call it aggressive. I would say this is definitely more of an aggression type thing. There's really one major reason you play this. It's if you're running Anticipate plus Royal Mage's Trick plus one of these 2 cards in your hand, plus one of Essence Flux, Ghostly Wings. You Anticipate will put 2 additional cards in the opponent's hand because it says everyone gets to draw 2 cards. So it does give your Royal Mage's Trick an additional +2 power if your opponent has 2 or fewer cards in their hand when you play Anticipate. So Anticipate forces your Royal Mage's Trick to get you more value, but I don't think I'm using Anticipate any other time except if I'm going Anticipate plus Royal Mage's Trick on the very same turn. I really am not a big fan of Anticipate otherwise. I don't want to give my opponent more cards in their hand because that's just more shit they can blow me up with. So very, very niche suggestion here if you want to play a weird high roll offensive. And Mind Tricks is another pretty low tier pick in my opinion. So it's only for a squad of single space figures. So it's every squad that this build could potentially have. I'd say this is mostly a counter pick for dealing with Nissa or Arlinn, who like to remain in their range form anyway. Yes, because it says when it's a single space figure that attacks your enchanted squad, after that combat you switch those the spaces that they occupy. Which means you can bring Nissa, who likes to run away, and of course Arlinn, who, while in human form, wants to remain far away from you. You can bring them close to you and then start running them over pretty quickly with like your Ruiner, assuming the Ruiner's nearby, which is something you'd have to plan for. Make sure your Ruiner's kind of close to the Enchanted Squad to follow up on that if your opponent is dumb enough to attack into your Enchanted Squad. You want to use this to counter like a green, and I guess it works kind of well against Kiora as well. Kiora wants to remain behind her wall of creatures and use Carry by Waves to push them up against you. So you could use this to try and bring Kiora forward into your squads. But again, I don't think this is very good. This is pretty easily triggered by damn near every squad in the game, which I think almost every green player is going to be running a squad. So again, another very niche pick. That's why I anticipate and Mind Tricks are at the bottom. I don't think these are cards I would run super often. But I think that just about does the for the explanation of how this army works. TLDR, in case you didn't really want to watch this whole video, your major two offensive engines are Jace and Ruiner. Your top cards that you want to have in hand are Royal Mage's Trick and one of either Essence Flux and Ghostly Wings, and you will play those two spells on the Ruiner to blow up your opponent's Planeswalker on some given turn. Pick one of these two squads and pick three of these spells for 65 points grand total, and add them into this core and have some fun destroying your opponents. Thanks for sitting around for this unhinged rant. We'll see you in the next AOTP for Dummies video.